We are the Church of the Larger Fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundary, working toward creating a global spiritual community, rooted in profound love, which cultivates wonder, imagination, and the courage to act. Adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic has been difficult for many bricks and mortar congregations. Early on in the pandemic, we were in a unique position to assist many congregations with the transition. We hosted special episodes of The VUU, provided advice and counseling to religious professionals, and trained congregations for live streaming worship, all while providing robust online programming for our members. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine to our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison, and investing in innovative ministry. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and to fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The VUU. The VUU is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of The VUU, Voices of Unitarian Universalism, brought to you by the Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are excited to be here this beautiful Thursday. It is Thursday morning. So already today, I have twice gotten the day wrong, resulting in a hilarious Slack exchange with Jody Malloy, our executive director here at CLF, where I said, "Can we meet after the GA meeting tomorrow?" And she said, "No, she's busy." And I said, "Oh, that's right. Tomorrow's Saturday. Of course you can't meet on Saturday." And she said, "No, tomorrow's Friday." And then we still tried to reschedule, and I still had the day wrong. So blessings on Jody for just hanging with me through that whole exchange. I'm Christina Rivera, she, her pronouns, and I'm coming to you from the Taino lands of Cabo Rojo, Puerto Rico, where it is gorgeous, low 90s, not too humid, and it'll probably rain later on today, but that's fine. Michael, how you doing?
Hi, everyone. Michael Tino here, joining you today from Mount Kisco, New York, a little bit north of New York City, from the office at the Bricks and Mortar congregation that I will be serving for another month because there's construction happening next to my home office, and I actually wanted to be able to think because otherwise I would not know what day it was either. and it's only Thursday. I guess it's only Thursday. Um, it is a beautiful, beautiful, bright, sunny day here. It rained buckets last night. And so if I'm at all foggy, it's because my almost 9-year-old daughter at 3:30 in the morning yelled out, "Daddy, Papa, is it raining?" loud enough to wake us up and like reset our brains to awake, but it was 3:30 in the morning. And we're like, "Yes," and she went right back to sleep. And we were like, so so all is good here in the beautiful Hudson Valley of New York. Aisha Hauser, how are you?
But maybe. Oh, nope, not yet. Oh, there you are. Hi. Hi, me. I'm Aisha Hauser. I'm coming to you from Seattle, Washington. I took a walk in the rain with my friend and with Gracie, my almost 60-pound dog, who is only wanting me to pet her. So every time I stop petting her, she nudges me with her snout. I just walked, and we need the rain. I mean, we need water, but would I like to be in Puerto Rico in the sun? The answer is yes, I would. So that's how I am. And it is only Thursdays. Like, wow, it feels like this week has been 28 days. Yeah. Time doesn't make sense to me anymore. DC, how are you?
Hi, I am DC Fortune, pronouns he, him, and I am coming to you from the beautiful Susquehanna Valley of Pennsylvania. And it rained buckets here as well overnight. I can see just a sliver of Penns Creek from the window where I have my morning coffee, and it was muddy and brown today, which makes me know that it rained a whole lot more further up north from here. And so I am doing okay. It's in the 70s here, sunny, some poopy clouds, the real pretty ones, the big white poopy ones. And I am learning things about my new place, including that I have some really pretty flowers and that I actually have some really deadly ones too, which probably gives me some sort of non-pastoral kind of joy. But I really like the fact that I have deadly nightshades in amongst the beautiful things of my garden. So and Thursday, like time has no meaning anymore. It just doesn't. It just, COVID, the pandemic, being locked inside, none of us know what day it is, what year it is anymore. And but I'm looking forward to GA, which is coming up, ministry days, and then GA. So yay! I'm gonna hand it back to somebody, probably Chris, because she seems to be like reasonable-ish help. Tanner, get me out of here, please. Make Chris come back and be real.
It's going to be all of us.
I think Wirecast has been busy.
Yes, it is all of us.
Oh, man.
A host choice kind of day, which means that we don't have dedicated guests for you. You've got the host for the entire hour or however long you're willing to put up with us for. And we're excited because host choice means that we can talk about whatever we want to talk about. And I'm gonna start off with a little bit of a recap of the UUA Board of Trustees candidates forum last night. So for those of you that don't know, the UUA Board of Trustees is electing several trustees in this cycle. And
well, the membership will elect the board members.
Yes, the membership.
The board itself does not elect. Yeah, no.
Exactly. So there's several positions on the Board of Trustees that are available. And two of those positions, elections. which means that on the UUA Board of Trustees, all of the trustee spots are numbered. So you're trustee number 1, or you're trustee number 2, or you're trustee number 3, or you're trustee number 4, or you're trustee number 5, so on and so on. You all get it. So when there is a contested election, the person who is contesting the election, which is usually a write-in candidate, or a petition candidate, has to contest a particular spot. So they have to say, I'm contesting seat number 10, or I am contesting seat number 11. So in this particular election, we have a contested election for position number 7 and position number 11. Position number 7, the UUA, the nominating committee for the Board of Trustees has nominated Reverend Suzanne Fass, and
who is a current sitting member of the board.
Who is a current sitting member of the board.
Nominated her for re-election.
And Rebecca Mathis is contesting that election. And then for position number 11, the board has, or the nominating committee has nominated Reverend Justine Sullivan and Reverend Beverly Cece. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. Not sure. Is contesting that position. So last night there was a forum in order to get all 4 of the candidates there together. I'm assuming that they recorded the forum and that it's available for viewing elsewhere. At one point, I think there were about 400 people who were viewing the forum. Probably the kind of high, and it probably started out around 300. So it was somewhere between 300 and 400 for most of the forum. They had questions that all of the candidates answered. They also had questions, some questions specifically for some candidates. They had a really interesting question round where they had a question about UU history, and the candidates selected the number 1 through 4, and that depended on which question they got. But overall, my impression from the forum overall was that there's very clearly some good work done by the UUA nominating committee, UUA Board of Trustees, UUA nominating committee, which is an elected committee, in nominating Suzanne and Justine. They just had some really interesting things to say, about accountability and about covenant and about the future of Unitarian Universalism, which was really, really exciting.
And Chris, if I'm not mistaken, next week we have members of the nominating committee coming on to talk about their process.
Exactly.
and how it is they select candidates and what the incredible amount of work that they put into vetting candidates and selecting candidates, especially for the board. So I'm looking forward to that conversation.
Me too. And one of the questions that got asked was one that we could discuss here is it was around the 8th principle, the proposed 8th principle, which many congregations have passed, including the CLF.
I think we've hit 200 this week. Yeah.
And so it was very interesting to hear, what the candidates thought about the 8th principle and where they saw it going. Certainly, Suzanne was part of the board that gave the charge to the
Article 2.
Thank you. The Article 2 folks who were reviewing the principles and purposes. But what really struck me was that both of the petition candidates had issues with the eighth principle. So much so that one of the candidates, Rebecca Mathis, said, in reply to a question about accountability, that her accountability was to herself, was to her own personal integrity. And that was really surprising to me, like for somebody running for UUA Board of Trustees, because the covenant that we make with one another is made with one another. It is not made with ourselves, right? Like, so how can you have accountability just to yourself in a covenantal faith?
It's so fascinating, Chris. I think that we can tie this reactivity to the eighth principle directly to sort of right wing talking points in our society, which is not to say that the people who are expressing this reactivity would situate themselves there, but the reactivity is the same, and it's a lot. I want to phrase this right. There is a certain segment of mostly white people who are afraid that someone with a lived experience of racism will get to evaluate how well we are doing anti-racism work and might ask us to do more. Will ask us to do. Will ask us to do more. And it's for those of us who actually want to do more. It's mind-boggling that that's a source of reactivity. But I think that's the way I want to name it. That like people are saying, oh well, I don't want to be told what to do. Unitarian Universalism is a faith where we don't tell each other what to do. I'm like, yeah, but Unitarian Universalism is a faith where we're in relationship.
Well, ironically, these people are wanting to tell everybody what to do and what not to do and what not to say. So it is a circular logic that is not logical. And for those of you who are interested, I posted on my public Facebook page that their words directly from Mattis and Cease's own websites. And, the startling thing about it is, I think there's a lot that's startling. There's there's this, and they are being very clear that they don't want any kind of progress. One of them, Beverly Cease, is basically like, I would support young people and people who, I think her words were something like choose marginalized identities to start their own faith called 21st century UUs. So what exactly are you saying about yourself? That you're the 19th century UUs or the 20? And it's to what end? Like, you want to just fight to fight? Like, what are you building? You want to keep everything exactly the same. And to your point, Michael, it is textbook reactionary. It is a conservative mindset, even if it's not political conservatism they are espousing. It is a conservative, like, why are we changing anything at all? We need to keep everything exactly the same. If you want something different, instead of them going off and having a 19th century UU, mind you, the 19th century UUs were more progressive. They were, please, from what right? I said what I said. Right. Go ahead, DC.
So I think I tend to see things in incredibly big picture, cultural pattern sort of things. And what I see here is human beings need three things. They need to know that they are unique, absolutely, positively unique. There's nobody else like them. They also need to know that they are part of, that they are absolutely like everybody else in like the same, like we are all human beings, okay? And then they need a tribe, a family of some sort, right? Where they have a purpose. And when things change, people fear that their purpose will be eliminated, and so that they will become irrelevant and no longer needed. And when your identity is wrapped up in the understanding or the concept of what you can contribute, and what you have to contribute is no longer necessary, people feel that they're no longer necessary, and then we get into the understanding of people can only imagine that others will behave as they behave, right? We lack imagination sometimes in that way, which is why for decades now, and I'm going to paint broad brushstrokes. Don't run me up by my thumbs. That white men have been afraid of becoming not the majority, because as the acting majority or as the acting power holders, they have treated those who don't have power in a particular way. And they know that they don't want that way for themselves, but they are unable to imagine that other people might not be the kind of assholes that they've been, right? And so there's this fight. Crap. That's the cable guy. I'll be back.
Well, no, and this is perfect because it's a perfect segue, DC, to what was said last night, specifically, around the eighth principle. And Rebecca Mathis said, and I quote, "I do not support the accountability section of the eighth principle." And end quote. And and then went on to explain that one of the reasons was all people with identities, people with identities, were not a monolith, and so and couldn't say with monolithic authority what they wanted white folks to do. And so until that happened, until there was like some kind of monolithic decision as to what accountability looks like, that wasn't a proper thing to have in our principles, because we couldn't, if we don't know what accountability is going to look like, then how can we have it in our principles? Which is just like, wow, like there's like so much. But it goes to DC's point of the idea that those in power are going to stay in power and keep that power, and just say, you all need to get your shit together. And once you get your shit together, then come on back to us and we'll figure out whether or not you're worthy of liberation, right? And we, the owners of that power and resource, will decide when and or if you are worthy of liberation. And until then,
there's the tension. There's the tension, Chris. Who owns Unitarian Universalism? And there's the, watching the rhetoric. Because my question has been, why don't why don't folks who are so unhappy self-select to leave? Like, what is, I know this sounds naive, and I'm going to say it anyway. Like, what battle do you think you're fighting? Like, here is really the majority of people. I'm going to take a wild leap and guess that most of the 400 people are not against the eighth principle, and not against progress, and not against wanting Unitarian Universalism to live out the values that we espouse of affirming each other and liberation, all of that. So I'm going to guess most of it is not in line with what the two petition candidates want. And so is there and this is an honest question, is there a sense of the same delusion that is held by the minority GOP, because they are the minority? Most of the people in this country want women to have the right, people with uteruses to have the right to choose over their own body. People want gun control. None of it's happening because it's the tyranny of the minority. And that's what feels like it's going on with Unitarian Universalism right now. It's the tyranny of the minority. It's a small group of people there that have been super loud, led by seemingly a white man who has decided he's some kind of weird ass prophet for, I don't know what, liberation, white people, thinking he's got the, I'm not going to say his name because he doesn't deserve it. Just this, had no issue with destroying a congregation and hurting people, like doing some serious damage. And then playing the martyr. I'm sorry. There's no, dude, like what a delusion. And there's a small group of people who are truly, when I hear the words tyranny of the minority, are represented by them because they just want to hold on to being right and really just continuing to cause harm and pain. To what end? That's what I don't even understand. It's like,
I think they said that's it. That because they would say the exact same thing to us. They are saying the exact same thing to us. Like Beverly is saying the exact same thing to us. If you don't like, you being you people with identities, if you don't like Unitarian Universalism the way it is now, take your toys and go somewhere else. Go make a different kind of Unitarian Universalism, because we like this Unitarian Universalism and we think this Unitarian Universalism can do good in the world. And
except they have a twisted fucking idea of what that Unitarian Universalism is.
Yeah, the juxtaposition of not wanting to change Unitarian Universalism to center liberation and thinking that we can do that, then, and thinking we could do good in the world is like, it blows my mind. Like the mental gymnastics that you have to do to get there. It's like, oh my God, that's exhausting.
And it flies in the face of sort of the foundational part of Unitarian Universalism, that we are a living tradition. That as we understand the world and ourselves better, we do better in the world and with ourselves and for each other. And so we have to keep changing, right? We have to. I mean, it's not an accident that our bylaws mandate that Article 2 be studied and examined for changes every 15 years. It is not an accident. Now, it just so happens we've let it go a little bit too long, and so maybe it's fossilized a little bit too much. And the last time it was reviewed, they didn't actually suggest any changes to the principles, and I wish they had. But it's not an accident. It's designed. It's part of our system that we need to do, that we can constantly be doing better. And when I hear those of you who want to lead us into the future need to leave, I have to ask myself, what past are you nostalgic for?
Oof,
Right.
there it is.
Right?
Right?
That's
Mm.
What
questionable.
passed? And it's not
Yep.
it's not 19th century Unitarian Universalism. The past that they are nostalgic for is 1969 Unitarian Universalism that
Right.
failed to live up to its promise to the Black Action Caucus. That's the
Exactly.
past they're nostalgic for.
Mhm.
Yes.
The Unitarian Universalism that 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 couldn't bring itself to be accountable to black voices and so made people leave.
Yeah.
Right.
We've been there
Whew.
50 something years ago.
Thank you for naming that, Michael.
Yeah.
And we're not going back.
We're not going back. And this cohort of Black, Indigenous, POC, and other folks with targeted identities have very clearly said, this is our Unitarian Universalism too, and we are not leaving this time. What happened in 1969 is not going to happen. We may lose, and we have lost people here and there, but the mass exodus, that is not going to happen this time. If you all are waiting for that to happen, let me be super clear and just like help you out. It is not going to happen. The youth, the young adults, the Black, Indigenous people, the queer people, the trans people, the disabled people, we are not going anywhere. This is our faith just as much as it is yours. And we are not going anywhere.
And let's be clear, many of the youth and young adults who are lumped into this you can leave too have been Unitarian Universalists longer than both of these candidates.
Say that. Exactly.
Oh.
Amen.
I mean,
Damn.
your children, Chris and Aisha, have been, your children, Chris, have been Unitarian Universalists longer than these candidates have, right? So,
damn.
And so, I heard a fascinating story on NPR driving over here today about a set of high schools in New York City that are co-located in one building, but kind of segregated because of the different, because it's New York City and it's education and power, whatever. I don't. So the high schools co-located in one building wind up being segregated, and they decided to combine all of the athletic teams of all of the high schools co-located in the same building, so that these young people would have a place to intersect and form relationships with one another. And they had a youth from who just graduated from one of these high schools on, and she was talking about how the young people who were on these new teams that were all thrown together had to be the ones to identify the ways in which structural racism was playing out in this new system. And thankfully, their coaches and teachers and administrators listened to them and said, you are right. Please keep pointing this out, because these are the things we need to work out of the system. But, these administrators could just as easily have said, shut up and do your thing.
Yeah,
and
you're gonna graduate in 2 years. Shut up. Yeah.
So it was fundamentally an experience where these youth were listened to and made some really amazing progress in this high school. Like, if we don't listen to the people who are noticing what's wrong, there's something wrong with us.
There's also no offer of, there's no faith. None of this is being done in good faith. When I read the statements that I posted from both of these petition candidates who haven't been vetted, they're just like reactionary. Here's what I don't want and here's what I don't like. It's not rooted in faith. It's not rooted in how do we have I'm afraid. It's not I'm afraid of being displaced. I'm afraid of not having a place to be who I am. And I think DC, I mean, it lacks the imagination of what it means to be in community. It's not either or. This notion that's so binary and limiting, and it's a scarcity mentality that's not real. All religions are made up. Unitarian Universalism is revelation is not sealed. It's the living tradition. To your point, Michael, right? This is so there's no reason to be so limited and frankly mean. I mean, some of this, I mean, to tell young people and people with identities, which is hilarious, it's like people who say, I don't like people with pronouns. I have news for you. Who's going to tell you that we all have fucking pronouns? Anyway, I digress. But like, it's this reactionary meanness that it isn't rooted in what does it mean to be in community. Like neither of them, and the whole movement of the reactionary, angry movement is simply, I don't like this. I don't like what you're doing. Not, let's talk about what the fear is. What is, I mean, I think there's nothing pastoral. There's nothing in good faith. There's nothing faithful about the reactionary movement that's simply saying that you always going in the wrong direction. What direction is that in trying to be expansive? What does that mean? And what are you offering? I want us to go. Thank you, Michael, for that. Mwah, chef's kiss. Because you're absolutely right. They want to go back right after the black, as what is Reverend Bill Singford called the white entitlement controversy? Because it used to be called the Black empowerment entitlement controversy, where white people said they're not going to fulfill a promise that was made, and then there was a mass exodus. And thank you, Chris. We're not going anywhere. Then we're not going anywhere. And I said that twice, so it's true.
And these candidates labeled the promise of funding for Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism as corruption, and I'm pretty sure one of them actually used that word in the forum last night, and without any consciousness that what it is a beginning, a very first small step toward reparations for what was done in 1969 and 1970. Right? Like, without any historical grounding, it's mind-boggling to me. And there are people who eat up that analysis because they want to mistrust leaders who are trying to move us toward liberation.
Right.
And it's about that lack of imagination to believe that anyone would behave differently than they would behave. Right? People who oh hell, I had something wicked smart to say. Oh, you know what this reminds me of? Happy Days. Okay, Happy Days came out in the 1970s, right? Happy Days, the TV show, right, with Ron Howard and all of that crowd, right, came out in the 1970s when there was great social upheaval, okay, and people were nostalgic for a time that this TV show spun a fantasy version of. Like, Happy Days wasn't real, right? It was a fiction, but there were people who were nostalgic for that simpler time when everybody was white and well behaved, right? And so we are in a similar time now where people are nostalgic for a simpler time when people were white and well behaved. And like All in the Family, like we're a time that never existed when, you know, girls were girl and men were men, as Archie Bunker would sing, right? Except this is the crowd that didn't get that was satire, right? That All in the Family was satire, right? Right? So like Happy Days didn't exist. The Brady Bunch didn't exist. Nobody had a blended family with 6 kids and brought their maid with them to Hawaii on vacation. That didn't happen, right? So this fantasy of what you remember Unitarian Universalists to be in the 1960s, if we look at what was happening then, we had a whole bunch of ministers who didn't have ethical boundaries laid out the way we have them now, and they were fucking congregants, and they were causing a ton of damage, and there was a ton of trauma and harm and real damage and real hurt done to people, and that's what you're nostalgic for. No, we're not doing that anymore. Cut that shit out, right? Happy Days was about a time when women who were beaten just didn't report it, okay? Because their minister told them to stay with their husbands, right? We are not there anymore. And we're not going to go back. So we need to understand that that was a fantasy, right? That nostalgic time was when Forrest Church was this lauded individual who wrote amazing books, but happened to be a serial misconductor who damn near split one of the largest congregations in our denomination because of his misbehavior, right? Those were not our salad days, kids. Those were not. You know,
So
like.
So is it fair to say then that the philosophy of these petition candidates has jumped the shark?
Oh!
And that's also a Happy
Well
Days
done.
reference.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Yes,
Wow.
that's awesome.
Wow. Yeah, the Gen Xers.
And for
Gen
those of you out
Xers
there in
right
VUU land
now,
who don't know what that means, Google it.
look at Google
Yeah.
it.
It's a
Yeah,
Happy Days
Google it.
reference.
Oh my God.
And,
Oh my
and it
God,
is one that
thank you, Michael.
You will use after
For
you
the
Google
rest
it.
of your life.
You will say, "How did I not have this phrase in my?"
Oh my
in my
God, that was
arsenal?
brilliant. That was brilliant. Yeah. So, but like circling back to what I said in the beginning before the cable guy called, is that nobody wants to be irrelevant. You know, Marge Piercy wrote to us about to be of use, right? Everyone needs to be of use. And if people don't feel that what they have to offer is of value, then they chafe and they resist and they react in ways that are unhealthy, in ways that are disruptive, in ways that cause harm. And we don't know a lot about how to grow old. We don't know a lot about how to move into senior advisor status, right? That's a difficult transition to make from leadership and power holder to trusted advisor who doesn't actually get to run shit.
White people don't. White people don't have a culture
Right,
of the elder.
right.
White
Sorry.
people don't.
You're totally right. I'm sorry.
White people
Yes,
Yeah.
white people don't. Yep. Right. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
So I
yeah,
did,
and we're seeing that play out now.
yeah. I
Sorry,
did
Randall.
want to circle back to the folks that did have some really great things to say about
Yes.
the future of
Yes.
Unitarian Universalism.
Yes.
So Reverend Suzanne Fast and Reverend Justine Sullivan, just some really, please go and watch. You know, you can fast forward through, you know, if you need to, the other petition candidates, but Suzanne and Justine just had some beautiful, nuanced understandings of what the role of the UA board is in the future of Unitarian Universalism, because I think that's really crucial too, is to really know, what the role is that you're petitioning to run for actually does. And it was very clear, obviously, Suzanne has been doing the job. It was very clear that Justine, understood what that is. And so their questions around, what Unitarian Universalism is going to look like in 50 years and what the role of the UUA Board of Trustees is in that vision was just wonderful. And so I would, really encourage folks to, to take a look at that. And also when they answered the question of right now there is a shortage of ministers and DREs. We're seeing like
why.
congregation, right? Congregations. Their response to the systemic issues that are causing those shortages were spot on. They had a very clear understanding of what support congregations need, but what the role of the board of trustees is in that conversation, versus their counterparts who really said, well, I would talk to the congregation and ask them what it is that they needed. And that, while it sounds good, that's not the role of the UUA Board of Trustees, right? Like, you can't talk to every single congregation out there. It's not possible. So the idea around accountability and how you get groups of people together, such as the Board of Trustees, and how they have different lenses into the situation and different groups that they're accountable to, so that they can bring that experience into the room, without having to go to every single congregation about every single issue. That is not democracy, friends. Like, the idea that any decision that the Board of Trustees makes needs to be affirmed by every single of the 1,000 UU congregations, that's not democracy, right? That is putting a block in progress.
That is abdication of leadership duties.
Yeah. And so just, really go and see what Reverend Suzanne Fast and Reverend Justine Sullivan had to say. There was just some brilliant moments. And, I wholeheartedly endorse their candidacy. And I really think that, Suzanne's already been doing it. She knows, Suzanne, they know what they're getting themselves in for, and have been just already serving Unitarian Universalism just brilliantly. So, and Justine would be making a fantastic addition.
Yeah, and it speaks to the care and the hard work that the nominating committee puts into this. And Aisha, I know you are a previous chair of that committee and can tell us like in gory detail, and we will hear much more about it next week. But there's a reason why we trust people with this duty.
And this is the difference between raw democracy and representative democracy. Raw democracy is the New England town meeting sort of model of things, where everybody gets together in the school gymnasium and votes up or down on each line item in the budget. Whereas representative democracy is, we represent leaders to do all the granular work for us, and we elect them to lead.
So
our obligation then is to follow.
I think, yes. And I think, to your point, the analogy of the small New England town is an important one, because I lived in New Hampshire for 2 years. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's very white, very white.
Yep. Yep.
And so and I think one of the candidates lives in Vermont. Yeah, is in a small town in Vermont, also white, really, really, really white. So when you're in a room full of people who, for the most part, share your demographic, and there's what's happened in this country is it happens, okay, is that there's a level of assumed trust or distrust, but it's still pretty homogeneous, where the opportunity for Unitarian Universalism has been, and this fucked up country, if it wouldn't center violent extractive capitalism, is how we build community when we are not homogeneous, when there are differentials of power and resources and all of it. And to me, start with fucking don't do harm. Stop doing fucking harm. Let's, like, the bar is in hell, people. It's fucking low. Like, just stop saying things. Stop attacking. Like, just stop doing harm. Let's start there. You don't even, okay, you don't like the eighth principle, just stop bashing it. Stop, because you sound racist. You sound it. If you may think you're not racist. I'm not going to argue that point with you. You fucking sound it. I've posted your words, and then you double down on it. So just stop sounding awful and exclusionary and mean. We're not in high school. We're not in 8th grade. And even then, we're not adolescent humans trying to figure out how to be together. We're adults we're always trying to figure out how to be human. But the reason why I point out, like, white people, the culture of whiteness, which people learn, is devoid of connection of self. I always quote James Baldwin: white people are not connected to themselves, and therefore are capable of witnessing and perpetrating some really horrific horrors. That's, it's toward the end of the hour, but like just really heinous things, and there really is some version of this in statements like, well, if you don't like it, leave. Now thank you, Chris, for that, because I was like, okay, well, I'm saying the same thing. I'm more saying, okay, I'm not thrilled that these people are running around saying pretty mean things. I'm saying, like, how can we become a faith community? But I think it's more like I'm questioning why they're staying. I'm not saying you have to leave. I'm not saying I'm saying I don't. What is it that Unitarian Universalism is offering you, when at its base at its root, it's a faith that does not, we have no creed. That we can agree on. We do not have a creed. We have covenant. Those are the two things maybe we can all agree on. And so if the covenant is changing and malleable, then what is it that you're getting from this? Is it fighting? Is it just simply fighting and rather than trying to build community? Does that make sense, what I just said?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Because I think when you, at the base of it, like, I'm fighting for liberation. We're fighting for liberation. We're fighting to get people free, right? And
yes.
So if you can't say that, like, if you can't say, like, what it is that you're getting out of Unitarian, or what it is you want out of living Unitarian Universalism, or it has some, like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, you gotta
be. What is it you have to give?
Right. You can't just say what you don't want it to be. You have to be able to say what you want it to be.
Exactly.
Well,
go ahead, Michael.
And when there are people who are saying what you want it to be, you can't just say to them, nah, how about you leave and make that.
Right?
We don't want to be more open and inclusive. We don't want, that's literally what they're saying. We don't want to be inclusive. We don't want to be open.
We don't want to listen to young people. We don't want to listen to BIPOC people. We don't want to listen to people with identities.
Or pronouns.
I laugh every
time.
I'm gonna giggle now all the time when I hear that.
People with identities. What's the actual fun? Come on, folks.
Well, it has been a great hour spending it with you all here in the VUU.
Wow.
We appreciate you being here with us. Join us next week where we will have the UUA nominating committee. And until then,
And then in 2 weeks, we're live from GA before we take a break for the summer, right?
Yay! That will be so much fun. Yay.
Wait. Take care, everybody.
Everybody. This has been awesome.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The VUU.